Alright guys, new box arrived. Here we go. It's finally happening. This is going to be big here for me. I've always wanted to do this here, and I've finally been able to pull the trigger on this project. We are converting the 300 to take a T56 transmission behind it. So here we go. This is a T56 Magnum, capable of holding 700 foot-pounds of torque right here. And we're going to be mating it to the 300 using these parts here and inside of this car here. So first thing up at the back here, we have a 31 spline drive shaft slip yoke for this, because the T56 takes the higher gear count here too. So this should go ahead and just slide right in there. Basically, we'll do that later on. I'm not too worried about it right now. I'm gonna keep that seal in there for now. Then we have the T56 Magnum here. So this one's made for the F-body cars. So it should be just like a stock Camaro type of transmission here. No shifter here, but we're going to use a sort of cheapo shifter for now, just to kind of keep us working here. Not too long, not too short, it's kind of a short shifter actually. So we'll use that here. I've got a shifter ball I use in the other car, so I'll go right in there. We do have some wire harnesses for these guys as well too. So for the reverse lockout, we'll need that wire harness for that as well. And we'll have to figure out how we're going to wire that up. That shouldn't be too difficult. So we'll just figure out how we're going to work that. Coming over here, we have some of these other harnesses too as well. I want to say this is, I don't know what this sensor is for. We'll look into that here soon. But I know we're going to have a reverse light signal here. I thought this was what this might have been here. But that harness looks a little bit different than what I expected. Over here we have the speed signal sensor down here too as well. So that's what that one's for. So somewhere on here, I'll have to do some searching, but we have the reverse signal on here somewhere as well too. Man, this is a beefy sounding transmission once you start to shift through here. Ah, man, so BA. This is the coolest thing that's going to be in this car, basically. This makes this project everything. It's so good. So how do we make it to the actual transmission, or to the engine? We're using a LS style bell housing. So this is what you would have basically in a stock LS1 type deal, or LSX. Any sort of LS engine is going to have the same bell housing for the most part. There are some exceptions, but in general, this is what you'll use here for most aftermarket flywheels. So we'll use this guy here. This will bolt directly onto this bell housing right here. And then at the very front of this here, we're waiting for the adapter plate. It's going to be a malwood adapter plate, which is about a 1/2 inch thick or so. So we'll run that thing on this car to make this actually bolt up to the 300 here, because this is the type of bell housing that you'll see there instead of this large one there instead. So that will adapt that to this thing. I have that on order, waiting for that to arrive in the mail. Hopefully it should be here soon. We can get this project going and get this party started.
So one of the other parts you'll see here is the spacer here, and this is actually the wrong one here. I have the wrong one for this part of the video. More on that later, but basically I had a wrong list of parts here. That was just not correct.
This will space us out to make up for the adapter plate spacing as well too. So it's going to kick out the slave cylinder in here just a little bit further. That way it can actually engage the clutch fully, because the clutch is going to be a 1/2 inch further out here, because we're spacing out the bell housing by 1/2 inch. One of the other trick products here is going to be this adjustable master cylinder. And that's what this is here. So here you go, clutch master cylinder. I think Holley makes it. Yes, this is a Holley part, 319-200. This is just like what you would have if you have a standard LS1 F-body type situation here, and you want to make some adjustments there. This will allow us to make sure we have the clutch perfectly tweaked here and aligned properly inside of the car. So those are all of our basics here. The biggest thing I'm waiting on is that malwood adapter plate though. That's going to take a while to get here. There is one other part of this as well. So we are going to need a clutch. And for this, we're going to reuse the LS, sorry, not the LS, but the V6 clutch here. I have a spec stage 3 plus I've been using before, and we're going to go ahead and run this on there. It has seen some use here, but it held up pretty well to the power it was making before it broke the old transmission. So I'll probably just go over it with a wire wheel and call it good there. It's not a perfect looking clutch or flywheel here, but I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not too concerned right now. And if there's an issue here, that gives me an excuse to go up to a double disc clutch here instead too. So we'll use this here. This will bolt right on there to the engine. Use that clutch. And we're going to go ahead and just use that step here on this car. And really that should be all you need to make this work. So mallet adapter plate, 1/2 inch or so.
So the spacer you see here is the wrong distance there. We're going to use a different depth for that one, more on that later again. And you also see an extended pallet bushing, which is actually not necessary. You can just reuse the replacement T5 300
All in, I think this swap is going to be costing me about $5,000 or so, all said and done. That's kind of the high end here. You could be going with a cheaper LS1 style T56. I went with the Magnum here. Right now, you can't even find an LS1 style T56 for cheap anywhere. They're really expensive. Like I last saw one there for like $4,000 used on carpart.com. So they're not cheap. They're out there, and people are getting money for them apparently. So decided to go aftermarket, brand new T56 Magnum. Going to be a lot stronger anyway. And that cost me about $3,500 for just that transmission. Then you have the bell housings here, another $300. So you got $300. This was not cheap either. All these adapter components are not cheap. The mallet adapter plate, it's going to cost like $450 shipped to the US, something like that. And then that could take a few weeks too as well. And then all this other stuff here just nickels and dimes you into that $5,000 price range there. So pretty close to it. I think really it's like $4,500 right now, but we'll see how it ends up here as we start to roll out with this. And then this car already actually has the clutch pedal installed here too as well. So we'll just go ahead and replace the master cylinder here. Shouldn't be a big deal. And get a proper reservoir in there. I did order that too as well. Wasn't too bad. And then we'll have to pull out the shifter here because we're going to run the T56 here is going to sit through that tunnel there. And I might have to modify my makeshift center console here to make that work too as well. But all in, this isn't going to be too bad. Famous last words, right? Alright, to install the flywheel on here, you have to get new bolts for this. And you can get the OEM bolts somewhere from the dealer. They're all torque to yield, so of course you can't use them again. Last time I did this, I went with the grade 8 bolt from just like a hardware store. I'm not sure what it is. It held up just fine, it seems like, so it's probably going to be okay. And the flywheel is a bit thicker than the flex plate. So you can see here's our flex plate, kind of thin here compared to the flywheel. And I'll just go ahead and shove this bolt through here so I can see how thick it goes through. That's about our space in there in the back side of it. And I need to compare that to these to make sure these are correct, because they don't actually make a bolt for this application specifically in the aftermarket world. So these are small block Chevy cam bolts, 2341001 from ARP. So we're going to try and run those in here. And they even come with a torque spec here, so that's cool to see. They want you to use lube. Don't really have any lube, so I'm not really going to do that. So we're going to go ahead and just check these here. So here's the flex plate or the flywheel. And just kind of checking here. Looks like we're going to have that much out of it. And there's our length on the outside. That might be kind of close. It looks like it's actually, it might be just a slight amount more length there on the flywheel, but if it threads all the way in, that's all that matters to me. Alright, so here we are. Got some wires hanging down here. Okay, just gotta figure out where these are gonna go. I'm sure these are gonna work out. There's a lot of thread space there actually, so this will be fine. Okay, so we have two different keys here, and no markings here on the flex plate to indicate where it should go, so we have to experiment. Yay! Yay! Experiment! Yay! No markings at all. Great. Alright, so I think I've got this lined up properly. It only goes in one direction. You can see all the bolt holes appear to be accurate. So we'll go ahead and just start tightening her in. I got one in ready, so we're just going to keep going with the rest of them. Bolts seem to fit pretty good actually. Nice and snug, so once we get the rest of them, we'll see if we can go a little bit deeper. It's kind of tight. We'll see. All right, I've got all those bolts on. Came on fairly well, and it seems like they're the right size for this. I don't have a torque wrench, but they only want 25 foot-pounds on these, so I just go tight with the 3/8 until it starts to bottom out, and I think we're pretty good. It's out here, it's with the motor now, so she's not going anywhere. So now it's time to put on the clutch and the pressure plate, and I will need 2 hands for that. Okay. So this is all steel. Wow, look at that. Okay. We have dowel pins too. What a unit. Absolute unit. Okay, so this came with all the bolts you need apparently, or at least some of them. We'll see how well they all fit. What's nice is that some of these are countersunk bolts too. So the ones that go inside of the bell housing are countersunk already. And that is one of the reasons why I was willing to pay as much money as this costed. So these ones will bolt nice and flush inside of the bell housing. This is a 3000 bell housing pad right here. These bolts throughout all of here. This one is also one of them too, but it's not used. It's not threaded in the block, so that one is just going to be the dowel pin that sits there. And you can see here, there's a dowel pin for this one too as well. So this one is a little bit larger diameter than the rest of them. But yeah, I'm excited about this. And this is one that will use the nut here. I'm not sure why. 2, 3. You must think I need a nut for this one too as well. I'm a bit worried about that actually. So the starter bolt goes through here. And I don't think there's anything on the other side of that one. I mean, I don't think there's a spot for you to put a nut on that, so we'll see how that goes. The rest of these all thread into the block. And on the back of this, we have all of these instructions here. So they want you to cut the dowel pin on the passenger side of the block. Okay, so their passenger side is my driver's side. So we'll have to check that out there. Next thing is to clean the block face, blah, yada, yada, fine, it's done. The adapter plate, yep, makes sense. You put the adapter plate on first with those countersunk screws. Then you need to do, okay, this is for the pilot bushing. Spigot bush. Okay. Fit the new clutch. Yep. Pretty cool there. You might try that. We'll see. I'm not too worried about that. We're not offsetting the starter at all, so I think I can reuse my starter. We'll see how that goes. Better be able to use my starter. I'm not sure that we're gonna, hopefully not have to change anything like that. Fit the bell housing on it. Okay. Makes sense. Make sure bolts don't bottom out. Yep, absolutely. Don't need to worry about that. We will check out the clutch spacing. I think I've got this all set up in my head nicely, but I'm not too worried about that. I think I've got the right spacing for all of this. One thing that kind of upsets me about what they say here is that you shouldn't fit a single piece tail shaft. 2-piece tail shaft is required. I'm assuming they mean drive shaft, and I'm doing a 1-piece drive shaft, so tough. So that's we'll see what happens. I don't know why they say that, but I'm gonna run this 1-piece drive shaft anyway, so I'm definitely not doing a 2-piece. There must be something else to that story there. Yeah, I'm not really sure. It might be a fitment for the car. This was obviously intended for some sort of hold-in car, not a GM Pontiac Grand Prix. So we'll see how this all fits there. So if there's something specific here to those cars, you know, like the tail shaft, probably not going to worry about that. And then there's also thing about the VN manual starter. That's another car of theirs too, of course. Obviously, we don't have that in the US, so we'll see how this goes. Really excited for this though. Really excited. Big day. This has been a long time coming. Can't believe it's finally here. I can get so much done now. Yes. So I'm doing a test fit right now, just to kind of see how it fits on here. If everything is looking pretty good. Bolt pattern's nice and tight where it should be. The dowel pins are really tight here. These should be going back a few more, just a little bit more here. I think with some pressure they'll go on there. So let's double check on that there. This one's pretty tight too. This one's barely going in there. And I think if I screw it on there, it'll just start to suck itself in there. So it's tight enough, a little tighter than I'd like there, but we do want to make sure the dowel pins are very good in place, because the dowel pins really help align the whole thing. But flywheel clearance looks good. Nothing's touching it, so happy with that. Yeah, that's looking good. And the starter clearance looks pretty good too. I don't think we'll have a problem with that. Overall, this is looking pretty good. Pretty excited for this, man. This is going to be so good. They do want you to trim, I think it's this one off here. Yeah, they want you to trim this dowel pin a little bit. So we will see how that goes there. All right, so I'm getting ready to install this new adapter plate. Here we have the V6 bell housing pattern right here with these countersunk bolt holes. And then we have the T56 bell housing pattern right here as well too. We have these here all along there, up top there. And then we have these dowels there too, which is really nice. I'm just kind of hoping they all go all the way through there in that bell housing. If not, I might have to trim some of these short a little bit. Alright, so the new bell housing is on here. I've got to clear the starter finally on the new adapter, and everything is looking pretty good so far. Gonna take some measurements next here to make sure that my input shaft goes as far deep as I need it to go, but I think we're looking pretty good. Alright, so I finally got to the next hiccup here with this project. It's the hydraulic throwout bearing here needs to come closer to the clutch. This is offset in here a bit too far, and apparently the T5 has a spacer there that I didn't know about, and I've been modeling this whole thing after that. So we needed to go ahead and get some spacers, and I just went and rush ordered a whole bunch of them just to figure out how long it needs to be. And then once I actually figure out how long that T5 spacer was, I can just kind of use these pieces together. With me today I have these spacers down here. So I got a couple there. So here's a 3/4 inch spacer. So we'll use that in combination with some of these here as well too. This is a Holly shim kit, and each of these is pretty small, but together they're pretty close to about a 1/4 inch. Yeah. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to keep off one of the spacers. I think just keep the smallest one off of this. Gonna double check the measurements too and everything, but that is currently the plan. Then we're also going to measure all of them here too with our digital caliper. You can see I actually have another spacer here that I bought initially, but it's not thick enough. This is a 1/2 inch, and we need basically twice that thickness there. So we're going to go ahead and pull this off here and add the spacers. And once we do that, it's going to move this bleeder valve out quite a bit, by like a whole inch. So you can drill out your bell housing for that, or massage it, I guess, for that, grind it off. What I'm going to do here instead is I have a kit that I bought from Spieler Motors. It has basically a remote clutch bleeding valve in here. So you have an 8-inch hose in here, and we have all these different fittings here to make this work. So that's a nice little kit they came up with here, full of just a bunch of parts off the shelf that should work for this. Alright, so we've got it in there. Got the spacer in there, nice and seated. The bolts, I use 50mm long bolts. You could probably go 45s with this, or probably even 40s, and be alright. There's lots of threads there, and we're pretty close to being bottomed out. And I did put 2 washers there and a lock nut to make up for the space. That way it doesn't bottom itself out. So that's looking good. And here's our other issue now, is that this bleeder is not going to be accessible outside of the car anymore. So we've got to use a remote bleeder valve for that now too. So I'm gonna go ahead and just pull that off. That's a 7/16. All right. Now please don't leak fluid everywhere. Oh my gosh, of course it's gonna do it. All right. Well, whatever. All right. So we're going to be using this kit here. So this is going to thread into this hole right here. And then after that you have this line here too, which goes into one of these guys here. But this is going to be our remote bleeder. And then that way this can be more flexible. It can go back in that hole. And we can bleed this remotely without having to unscrew this guy. Which seems like it could be a good idea, but we'll see how this works out. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and just thread her in there. Perfect. So this is going to be tight. It might work, I don't know. It's going to be so tight. We'll see how that goes there. I might have to trim off some of that bell housing to make this fit. So the transmission's bolted in. We have the cross member attached. Bell housing is all attached too as well. Things are looking good. And got all the wires in here too. Just got to make sure I put some fluid in it before we actually do anything with it. I've also got the new cross member settled in here. Actually, it's the same cross member. It's just modified. You can see here we have it going back a little bit here on both sides and going down a little bit too actually. So the T56 comes down quite a bit. And I think that's going to fit nicely. It seems pretty solid. I had to brace it a little bit there. You can see I've got some ears there in that. A little brace there in that too. An ear in this side too as well. But that should hold her. And minimal cost. And minimal fabrication. Should be good for now. Maybe someday we'll do another one, but this is going to work out just fine for now. Alright, so for doing the T56 swap, one of the things you need to wire up here is the reverse lockout solenoid. And you'll need this harness for that, this connector. So here's that part number, 12101-857. This will go into the transmission here by the shifter. Oh, nice, they come with little crimps there too. I'm going to solder this. I'm not going to mess with those crimps. Or I might just use my own crimps and heat shrink instead too. So you can see here there's no polarity in this. These wires are exactly the same color, so you can just give this 12 volts on either side and a ground on the other side to get this working here. So with the T56, the LS1 T56, they will engage this under 5 miles per hour. And there isn't really a table that I've seen in the transmission or in the PCM somewhere for a manual transmission that I can have it engage that at that speed. So you need to have another way of engaging this solenoid, and what most people do is they'll connect it to the brake lights. So when those get 12 volts, when you push the brake pedal down, that will engage the solenoid and allow you to go in reverse a lot easier. So that's what I'm going to do, but I'm also going to use this with a relay too. I want to have my own little push button switch too, just in case, or if it's easier that way, I don't know. I'd like to have that there because sometimes I don't want to push on the brakes, especially if I need throttle. So that's what I'm going to be doing. Alright, so today we're going to test it, see how it goes. So it's running alright, don't see any leaks yet, but gonna let it get warm here. It is a little bit hesitant and sluggish off the line here with the gear set in here, but you know, it is what it is. Eventually I'll get my new rear gear in here. Just check on things, make sure it's all looking good, and make sure there's no leaks, nothing's heated too much, and nothing gets too hot here. Alright, back in the saddle here. Gauges look good here. Oil pressure looks good. Coolant temp looks alright. Voltage looks alright too. It's going to read lower there. We have our vacuum gauge on there, which is kind of cool. It reads a little bit higher than this one does. So that's a little bit interesting. Maybe that's a better vacuum source than that one does, or just a better tube going into it. Otherwise, it's looking pretty good here. So I think we're going to be good to go ahead and start to do a test run here. See how that goes. Break off, and let's go around the block a couple times. See how that goes. Okay, alright, man. Alright, well, car's running pretty good. Transmission's working flawlessly. I've got some vibration here if I really lug it down, which is interesting. Like if I put it in 4th gear right now, like I've got some vibration going on there. I don't think it's anything driveline. I think it's probably more to do with the car than anything else, but I'm not really sure. Maybe I'll just check out bolts, make sure things are tight there. But otherwise, things are coming out pretty well here. Again, I'll take it around the block. You have the low log going now as well too, to just make sure everything is looking good. I'd probably want to bump up the idle just a little bit and get rid of all of the after fire thing I've got going on right now. It's kind of ridiculous. Like 2,000 RPM, it's just burbling. It's a bit much, man. So. Alright, gotta go into 5th gear. Nice. Pretty good. Good, man. I love it. So much better than the automatic.